The second generation of the Opel Mokka showed 4 years ago which direction Opel's design would take, and it achieved market success both in the combustion engine and electric versions. However, after 4 years it's time for a facelift, so let's take a look together at the refreshed version and see if it keeps up with the latest trends, or maybe, in other words, if it has succumbed to the latest trends. I invite you to watch, especially if you're new to my channel. My name is Zakar. Let's get started. Remember how Mazda made a philosophy for everything, like zoom zoom? Opel is now doing the same. They have key slogans like detox and greenovation, which refer to minimalism and ecology respectively. The slogan "Black is Beautiful" reflects the many distinctive black accents on both the car's exterior and interior. Of course, besides that, there's also the term Opel visor, which refers to the front section of the car. And personally, I'm not a fan of it. However, it has to be admitted that ever since they appeared in Opels, you can tell from a distance that every Opel is definitely an Opel, and in that respect, the visor definitely fulfills its identifying function. Anyway, all these philosophies are obviously meant to spark the imagination of a potential customer, but once someone buys this car, decides on it, what are they actually interested in? First of all, not the philosophy, but the specifics. How this car drives, how it performs. So let's get down to the specifics. Visually, this facelift is not a game changer. The front has been changed a bit, all the chrome has been replaced with black, and there's also a new color called tropical green. Nothing that requires further comment. Maybe let's just pop the hood. Only now is it worth mentioning that this is the electric version, because everything I've said so far applies to the Mokka, regardless of what kind of drive it has. So let's take a look at this electric marvel. I can't start with the trunk capacity since it's not available, but the drive is efficient. Already a year before the facelift, the electric Mokka got 156 horsepower instead of 136 and a bigger battery, 54 kilowatts instead of 50. Note that power rose by a greater percentage than the battery, yet range improved from 320 to about 400 kilometers per worldwide harmonized light vehicles test procedure. Charging power stayed the same, up to 100 kW direct current and 7.4 alternating current with an optional 11 kW three-phase charger. Speaking of technical data, you probably remember the times when Opel basically offered a sporty version for almost every model. You could drive out of the dealership with a fast Astra, Corsa, Meriva, even Opel Performance Center, not to mention the Vectra or later the Insignia. And those times seem to be over. Right now you probably won't find anything over 180 horsepower in Opel showrooms, but recently a ray of hope appeared because Opel showed a short video where they're announcing the Mokka in the GS Rally version, which has 280 horsepower and is deeply rooted in motorsport. And of course, these are just announcements, and you know how announcements can be, but literally just now there's some news. Opel has announced a GSE version of the Mokka with 280 horsepower, and as expected, it will be electric. Inside the facelifted Mokka, there's been a blackout. Let me explain. First of all, the headliner is now black, and secondly, the hated piano black is out and has been replaced with a matte finish. No more plastics that get scratched just by looking at them. Finally, there's a new steering wheel pretty similar to the ones installed in the latest Opel models, and the biggest change is the infotainment system. Here in front of the driver there's now a bigger screen, a screen that interestingly isn't controlled by the buttons on the steering wheel, because here we have cruise control, here we have music, but only by buttons, likely following the Citroën style with stalks. Here we switch between different modes, as you can see, and with this button we can reset something or access various other information without getting into that characteristic control mode. Besides that, you can't really change much on this screen, it's just defined this way and that's it. On the right side we have these typical tiles. There's a main button that takes us back to the starting point, and here we have this tile interface. You can scroll it to the right and it scrolls in a fancy way. We have a lot of different options here, And there's also the Hey Opel option, which I'd like to move on to now. I just said Hey Opel. It already understood me, so I'll ask it. Maybe I'll turn it off now so I don't say too much. And now, Hey Opel. Ask Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer where I can get the best pizza in Warsaw. Exactly, because this car, ladies and gentlemen, is supposedly equipped with an interface that lets you ask Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer about various places in the navigation. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. I mean, this car definitely has the Connect Plus package purchased, which is supposed to make this feature available, but for some reason it doesn't work. Maybe it only doesn't work in this car. I'm not saying it doesn't, because Opel is absolutely confident that it should work. So yes, but sometimes, for example, when you go into the navigation search here, it starts working, but in a rather strange way. Pizza in Warsaw.
9 results found.
Great.
Pizza is the first result.
Yes, in Radom, the second one is also pizza. And further, there are lots of pizzas, and at the end there's Zgorzelek. Bravo, enjoy your meal. So yes, I think some kind of upgrade would still be useful here in this Hey Opel software, but other than that you can here. Anyway, I won't take up your time because these are pretty basic things. Finally, I'll tell you an interesting fact. We have a knob here to control the temperature, and on the left side we also have a knob to control the temperature, but this is a single zone air conditioning system. So if we set it to, say, 28 on the right, then on the left, when we start turning it, we go down from 28 to, for example, 19.5, and then we turn the right one again and set it back to 28. So it's a perfect way, listen, for the driver and the passenger to have a conflict. My friends, this episode is partnered with AutoDNA, the easiest and most affordable way to check a car's history before buying and avoid costly mistakes. You can be sure the car wasn't stolen, had no odometer rollback, and wasn't in an accident. Research shows 40% of drivers had to fix problems from a car's accident history they weren't aware of before buying. So it's better to check its history. You'll find a link to AutoDNA in the video description. You're very welcome. And let's not buy a pig in a poke. A small car, but a lot of space inside. Look at it in relation to the steering wheel. I position myself perfectly under the headliner. I have practically 5 fingers of free space. And that's because I'm able to lower the seat really far down. And the steering wheel adjustment, by the way, is also, for such a small car, in an impressive range. There's plenty of knee room because the console is concave right in front of me, so I'm not restricted by anything. Visibility is also perfectly fine. I'm kind of on the edge. I miss the inner mirror a bit, but generally I don't have to lean down much to see everything ahead of me. The pillars may not be the thinnest I've ever seen, but they're relatively far from my eyes, so they don't limit visibility much. In the second row there's a surprise. I can sit upright and still have space above my head. Maybe I don't have much space left, but I can just barely feel that the headliner is above me. And that's a surprise. But what's definitely a surprise is that I don't have any space left for my knees, as you can see. It's true that I managed to sit directly behind myself, but it comes at the cost of great knee pain, which I've just, relieved. Oh, life is already better. Anyway, it's impossible to sit here directly behind yourself. For 2 guys who are 2 meters tall, well, it's not a big car, so as I said, no surprise. Besides that, we have 2 USB ports here. We have 2 pockets. We have door pockets, not too big. There's no armrest here, of course. We have foldable backrests. The bench doesn't slide. Above your head we have 3 lights, 1 general and 2 for reading. So for a city car, in my opinion, that's more than enough. This material bends slightly under your finger. It may not be luxurious, but it's something. Here, further on, the narrow strip on the dashboard is already hard, and then it continues. Just look at this texture, it's pretty nice. Then there's also a piece of plastic that looks a bit cheap, and then, well, let's say one of the last pieces of piano black. Here we have entirely hard plastics, and at the top of the door is also hard material, which interestingly becomes soft further down. Let's say it resembles stitched leather. Lower down we can still enjoy the soft material until we finally reach the armrest, which, well, isn't exactly very comfortable or luxurious. And when it comes to the fit and finish, it's silent. Something moves here, but without creaking. Here it moves a lot, but also without creaking. This part is suspicious, but nothing dramatic. Aha, and when I was driving near my house on cobblestones, I found a squeaky spot here that I tried to silence while driving, and so I pressed in different places, and somewhere here I had to press to make it stop. Besides that, even in worse conditions, nothing really makes any noise here. And when it comes to rattling, it's quiet here too. I'll show you on the right as well, it's not really bad either. The Mokka provides standard storage space with a 12-volt outlet and USB-C port for phone charging. Here's a little tray, maybe for some coins, and 2 cup holders. The storage compartment under the armrest is really tiny, but it pleasantly surprises with the door pockets and space for a big bottle. And look, a huge glove compartment in front of the passenger. I think this compartment ends near the front bumper. Now we're looking into the trunk, and even the process of opening the trunk itself deserves a comment. Because yes, this is the most logical place considering the special indentation in the bumper. But no, the button is lower, right above the license plate. We press it, then only after that do we put our hand where it seems like we should start, and only then does the trunk lid open. It's a 2-step process with 310 liters inside. I think that for such a city car it could be more, but honestly there's probably nothing to complain about. We have a couple of hooks, we have a double floor, which means the floor, which we can lower here if needed, differs by just under 10 centimeters. We can also fold down the backrests, and this way, with the floor set at the upper position, we get a flat floor, and that's basically it. After folding down the backrests, we get 1060 liters of capacity, which again may not be a record value, but there's definitely nothing to complain about in this segment. And now for the measurements. I'm actually at the charger right now, so maybe let's start with the charging power measurements. See, 101. A moment ago it was 103, you probably can't see it, but now you can, and today I even saw 105. So Opel declares that the maximum will be 100 kilowatts. Meanwhile, this value is slightly but still exceeded, which is pretty cool. As for energy consumption, in the city I got something around 15 kilowatt hours when I wasn't really trying, while on the highway it was about 18, and now the driving impression. I'll refer to my own words where I said that right now, there's not really anything you can drive out of an Opel dealership that gives you any kind of extreme driving experience. And that's also the case here, even though this is the fastest of the Mokkas, the electric Mokka, 156 horsepower, 9 seconds to 60. But all of that doesn't really come with a big dose of excitement, right? So if we press the gas pedal hard, this car will start accelerating quite efficiently. And when we're driving on a 3-lane road in the city, if we spot a place somewhere on the right or left, we accelerate, we'll get there on time, we'll take that spot. No problem really, it moves efficiently around the city. However, all of this happens at a certain pace. Let's say of a calmly driven, definitely but still quite calmly driven car. And I had another interesting experience because I switched to the Mokka from the BMW iX, which had 544 horsepower, to a much weaker car. Honestly, getting around the city hasn't changed since this car, as I said, keeps up. However, I got a lot fewer, let's call them, warnings from the passenger seat telling me not to accelerate so hard because it's just uncomfortable. Yeah, the inner ear acts up, she really felt it. Of course, the BMW could do that, but here I don't know how hard I'd have to press the gas pedal for anyone to notice that I'm driving too intensely, too dynamically, too aggressively. Here, regardless of the mode, basically this car always drives and accelerates from 0 in pretty much the same way. Since I'm talking about modes, there's a normal mode, which fortunately is always the default when you start, and that's more than enough for everything. There's nothing that needs to be improved in it. I don't recommend the eco mode. Here the button only responds every now and then. Maybe someone spilled coffee on it once, I don't know. Anyway, it clearly says here, reduced vehicle performance, and that's exactly how it is. Driving in eco mode is boring. emotionless, and I really wouldn't want to drive in this mode any longer than I'm recording this part of the video. So we switch back to normal and then up to sport, and in sport mode, listen, if we were to step on the gas now, well, I'm stuck in traffic, so that's not really possible, but basically the car will accelerate exactly the same way. So even in sport mode, you won't get a reprimand from the right seat, but when you're driving in sport mode around the city, the liveliness of the response to pressing the gas is noticeably greater. So let's say the maximum power is the same, but the way that power is delivered in sport mode is clearly more enjoyable. If someone needs to feel a bit of power after all. I don't think it was a big game changer, but there really is a difference between the modes. However, for me, normal was sufficient for most situations. All the more so because it basically only affects how it responds to the gas pedal, because the steering wheel turns about the same, probably exactly the same. Speaking of the steering wheel and driving impressions, aside from the drivetrain, both the steering and suspension are surprisingly good. It offers exactly as much resistance as we need and as we expect in a city car like this, but it's not some crazy power steering either, where you can turn the wheel with one finger and feel nothing. No, here the resistance is just right, and it's actually quite pleasant. There's a real connection and easier understanding between driver and car. However, the suspension surprised me, though I shouldn't be, since electric cars with a low center of gravity usually behave that way. But still, I'm getting into a car that wasn't really made to impress everyone with super emotional driving. And it does the moose test effortlessly left, right. The tires didn't even squeal and we're already moving on. In that sense, this car's suspension is very well balanced, because when driving the way you do in the city, over tram tracks, manholes and so on, you don't feel any discomfort. You could even say that this car is actually quite comfortable. Surprisingly, when you need a sharper maneuver from this car, it delivers. Add to that a bit of symbolic ground clearance, a reasonable turning radius, and what we have is basically a textbook example. A car that's comfortable, convenient for the city, and easy to park thanks to its modest size. Thanks to the ground clearance, we're not afraid of curbs, and in most situations it's more than maneuverable enough. In a moment, we'll drive onto a side street with cobblestones and listen to how it handles. And when it comes to the suspension and the fit and finish on this road, I've already been there and I know something, but now you'll hear it too. While we're discussing listening, it's also worth mentioning the soundproofing. Basically, in this car, you can hear the city, meaning the car itself doesn't make unnecessary noises. You don't hear the engines here. Even when I accelerate, there's no characteristic high-pitched engine whine. From below you can hear the suspension working or the sound of the tires, but only in moderate amounts. Decibels, let's say it's not completely transparent, but you also can't say that it's banging. So for me, the car is well tuned for the city, thoughtfully designed in terms of all the qualities you need in an urban environment. And now we have cobblestones. Watch out for the right door now. Oh. No, I didn't feel anything there. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but when I drove here recently, I turned it off by pressing something. When I pulled the handle, I think, but it's still rattling. I don't know, there's something in those right doors, but the suspension makes that noise. Only as much as I expect from the tires, nothing more. Overall, I'm very satisfied, and the most satisfied is my wife, who I'll never surprise with too sharp acceleration in this car again. Prices start at 111,000 zlotys for the 130 horsepower gasoline model, with the mild hybrid costing 12,000 zlotys more. With real fuel consumption being about half a liter lower per 100 kilometers, it won't pay off quickly. I also doubt that the 9 extra horsepower from the mild hybrid will make any difference when it comes to justifying such an expense. For the electric car, prices start at 158,000 zlotys. Although I found information about a promotion from a few months ago where the price was 20,000 lower. So if you have a place to charge, and especially if you have a place to charge cheaply, then yes, much more powerful. After all, with subsidies, an electric car could be even cheaper than a combustion engine car, making it a smart choice in this comparison. I mean, if you mainly drive long distances, then gasoline will obviously be better, but on the other hand, if you mainly drive long distances, there are probably better cars for that than the Mokka. So, What do you think? Has the facelifted Mokka followed the latest trends? Well, kind of. We have a bigger screen and a bit fewer physical buttons. But fortunately, it hasn't gone in the direction of excessive digitalization or moving everything completely to the screen or, I don't know, huge protruding screens. It stopped at an optimal, good place of modern infotainment, but still with analog control of the most important functions. And it still drives like the previous one, confidently and comfortably. So this refresh is more of an evolution than blindly following a trend. Thank you for watching this episode. Remember to subscribe and see you in the next videos. Bye.